We are in Oglesby, Illinois, and we are talking with Yasinowski, who is a full-blooded Lithuanian who lives in this town that has quite a lot of Lithuanian history. We are standing right next to Lithuanian Opera House, and there was also St. Constantine Lithuanian Church. So could you tell about your childhood in this town?
I was born in 1947. Four grandparents all came from Lithuania. My grandmother was Okokas, my grandfather was Yesinowski, and my mother also her parents came from Lithuania, and they lived in a neighboring town.
So that was before World War I, yes?
My grandmother came in 1913. My grandfather here, Yasinowski, came, I believe, in 1905, about the same time that Opera House was cornerstone for the Opera House up there, which I think is interesting because you mentioned that maybe it was for other things besides opera. Personally, I think the Lithuanians that were here at the turn of the century were cultural. They came for the coal mine work that was here, but they also brought everything, linens and things from Lithuania. I still have my grandmother's chest that came from Lithuania. I have two. One is my grandmother's. I'm not sure of the other one. They're a little rusty in that, but they brought in fine things from Lithuania, the linens and things like that.
So what do you remember from your childhood? Like, did you live entirely in the Lithuanian community here?
No. Oglesby
did you go to the Lithuanian church here?
No, just I probably went to that church when I was young, maybe up to 5, until they merged with the Slovenian church, and then they moved to a different church. Then they became Holy Family. So I really don't remember the Lithuanian church. I definitely don't remember going in the Lithuanian Opera House. And Oglesby didn't have a lot of Lithuanians. I came up with about 12 names of Lithuanians that lived in the neighborhood in that. But we went to the Lithuanian grocery store, Gudaitis, and they had Lithuanian sausage and, they had other things. But yeah, Oglesby had 16 grocery stores. They had Austrian, they had Italian, they had quite a few Italians here. But Lithuanian population in Oglesby was never really high. I think the Lithuanians that were here with the Opera House came for the coal mines, and they boarded, maybe they didn't marry, but eventually they moved on to different areas for that. But I do think this was an opera house. My grandmother, we had kuchas. That was the big thing every year. We had the kuchas in Lithuanian traditions, and she talked about the old country. I just thought it was the best thing, and I wanted to go to Lithuania. And then finally they got free, and I was able to meet with her relatives there.
When you were born in your childhood, the Lithuanian institutions were already disintegrating here. I mean, this opera house was already closed, and the church closed about soon after your birth, yeah? So how did you and when did you decide to look into your Lithuanian heritage and come back, come visit Lithuania?
We got letters from Lithuania, and that was a big deal. And my grandmother, she never became an American citizen, so she always had the green card. Every year she had to go to the post office and fill out, it wasn't a green card, but it was, I'm not sure what color, but she had to fill it out. Because my grandmother, she just, kuchas and talked Lithuanian to my mother, spoke Lithuanian, and I just, was interested. Unfortunately, I didn't learn Lithuanian until I was older, and then by then it was kind of late, and I've been trying ever since. It's sunku, very difficult, yeah.
When did you first come to Lithuania, and how did you see Lithuania then? How did you manage to find your relatives there?
I came to Lithuania for the first time in 1992 with a group from Rockford. At the time I was living in Rockford. Because I left Oglesby when I was 22, and then I've been back 22 years now, okay? I was with a group in Rockford, and they had a double-decker bus tour after they got free. And I had letters with addresses from Sventisario post office, but the tour group lady, they said they moved, so I didn't find my relatives. Then I went back 3 years later. In the meantime, they wrote. She advertised in a paper, Lithuanian paper, and somebody saw it, looking for these relatives, because at the time, a lot of people were looking for their relatives in Lithuania after they got free. So they contacted me, they wrote, and when I went back in 95, and they were all there at the airport, all lined up. with flowers and everything. Very emotional, yeah.
So how many times have you visited Lithuania since?
Well, that's a good question, because I obviously didn't keep track, because I'm not sure if it's 10 or 11, okay?
And so how did you see Lithuania changing?
Oh, a lot. When I first went there, the whole agriculture system, because of the collective farms, they were trying to give back property, people were claiming it and that. The stores were still more the Soviet time era and that. They had taken down the Lenin statue in Vilnius, yeah. That was impressive, you know, it was all gone. So every time I went back, I was going every 2 years because I was still working, and every time I went back it changed. There were more stores, more cars on the street, more colorful dresses, and economically I think it changed in that. But I remember talking to someone and predicting after they got free, it seemed like there was some greed there on the agriculture side. I think the farmers, Ūkininkai, were kind of left to fend for themselves. Because I remember going back in '95 and helping Monica with the sugar beet harvest or that. And she had a horse and a wagon, and there's some interesting stories, you know, the horse bolting, anyway. So, but I remember actually working, you know, helping out, you know, harvesting that, yeah, because I used to go in October, yeah.
Before Lithuania became fully independent, you also mentioned you participated in protests against Soviet Union here in America.
Yes, Gorbachev came to Washington and visited with Bush. And I was so disappointed because Iceland was the first country to acknowledge the freedom of Lithuania. And the United States, after 50 years supporting a free Lithuania, Bush, you know, got buddies with Gorbachev. So when Gorbachev came, there were Lithuanians that demonstrated. There I went. My neighbor sewed a little flag, because you couldn't just go and buy a Lithuanian flag. So she sewed a little flag for me and demonstrated on the Capitol steps. And then at night we went to the Russian embassy and we chanted. I don't even remember what we chanted though, you know, free Lithuania or something like that. Or, you know, so, but yeah, I demonstrated for. And then the next day when he left, I went to the where the helicopter took off, you know, the motorcade. I went there and demonstrated. So.
And so
I did my part, yeah.
Are you happy with the way? Are you happy with the way Lithuania turned out now after independence?
Oh, definitely. And going back, you know, sometimes you talk to someone, and that first trip in '92, okay, we were in Vilnius in a park, and some of the older ladies that spoke Lithuanian, we sat next to a Lithuanian lady. And she said, I'd rather starve under and be free than live under the Soviets, said that. But then you have where the economy was hard. Like I remember one relative saying, you know, more people are starving in Lithuania. That was, you know, this was in the 90s at some time. So I think it was difficult. I think it was difficult. I'm happy. I think, like the one relative, because all her grandchildren, or 5 of 6, are living in England, I think she feels, you know, if they were still, you know, not free, maybe, you know, she had more family around, but she has 4 children that live there that are in their 60s. So I think overall, yeah, I'm happy, but I mean, really the question is, are the Lithuanians happy to be free?
Here in Oglesby, we see Lithuanian history from the American side and how it looked from these old Lithuanian colonies that began before even First World War. Some actually started in the 19th century, and by the time Lithuania was occupied and by the time it became independent, actually many people here still consider themselves Lithuanians, even if born in this area in America, and even if their parents were born in America. And the institutions these people build and that help nourish the Lithuanian lifestyle and culture here in Oglesby and elsewhere in Illinois are all marked on the map.rulithuania.com map of Lithuanian American heritage and described in the global.rulithuania.com Encyclopedia of Lithuanian American Heritage. Both are available online, and you can discover the exact place of this building with the name Lithuania Opera House on it, as well as the place of the old St. Constantine Lithuanian Church of Oglesby, Illinois.